Okay, lesson 19, Pranayama. Prana is energy, but not just energy, it's vital energy. Ayama means directing. It means that you can direct energy, actually, by using the power of the mind. Now, there's a lot of confusion about pranayama because in most, if practiced at all in modern yoga, it doesn't occur so often. But pranayama is usually practiced as breath control. And there are several explanations for that. But there are many indications that it's not right. And I will explain all those things today. First, how is it possible that pranayama has turned into breath control throughout thousands of years of yoga practice? I must say that there are places in the world where pranayama is practiced correctly as energy control, but it's rare. The Netherlands has a huge following of people doing pranayama correctly because Ajita has been teaching this for the past 50 years. So his base has spread considerably, and many of the people educated by him are teaching themselves properly and also training people to become teachers. In the Bible, you have the concept of the doubting Thomas. You know what a doubting Thomas is? A doubting Thomas is a person who rejects phenomena that you cannot clearly or scientifically prove. Subtle phenomena. Because what is energy? Show me your energy. So, people have turned energy control into breath control because breath control is easy to understand. But energy control, using my mind, what the hell is that? The doubting Thomas in the Bible is the person who doesn't believe in miracles, the person who doesn't believe in spirits or ghosts, who doesn't believe in anything subtle. And everything related to energy is subtle. We are all doubting Thomases. Almost everybody, all persons, people, are doubting Thomases. We don't believe what we can't see, smell, taste, hear, or touch. And it is difficult, but it requires, in case of pranayama, it just requires a systematic approach which we follow to introduce you at some point to actual pranayama. It is the reason why we start with pranayama halfway in the course, not in the beginning. Because if we had done this in the beginning, you may not have come back to the next class thinking, what kind of crazy thing is that? But now that we followed this very systematic approach, which is the strength of yoga, if it is done correctly, I'm not telling you anything strange today, because you've gradually gotten used to the idea that everything is in fact energy. You know, I once worked at Schiphol Airport, the airport of Amsterdam Airport, it's called Schiphol, in the freight department. And every Friday evening, a truck would come from the southern province of the Netherlands with small boxes of isotopes. Isotopes are used by hospitals to make X-rays. Isotopes are a product from nuclear power plants. So the material is what do you call it? It's nuclear. It's dangerous. So these boxes are this small, but the content of the box is this small. It's packed. It is in a capsule. It's packed and packed and packed and packed and packed to such a point that nothing can happen with it. So one day, one of my colleagues accidentally flattened one of those boxes by driving over it with his forklift. And a forklift is a small machine that's very heavy, because a forklift needs to lift cargo from a truck or from the shelf, and so it has to be very heavy so that it doesn't topple over. So 4,000 kilo, a small forklift. So the box was completely flat. So everybody in that building, in that storage building, everybody took distance from it. But the guy on the forklift, he got up and he said, "Where are you all going? There's nothing wrong. You see anything? You smell anything?" So they called when this happens, you have to call the fire brigade. The fire brigade comes with all their material in suits and a measuring device, a Geiger teller, to see if there's any radiation. And amazingly, there was no radiation at all. The doubting Thomas was the guy who flattened the package and was surprised that everybody was taking distance, because he just couldn't believe that actually being exposed to this radiation, if there would have been radiation, could have led to terrible disease, cancer and what have you, the most terrible forms of cancer like leukemia, blood cancer and what have you. It can lead to death. But because he didn't see anything, he didn't hear anything, didn't smell anything, I mean, what's wrong? That is a doubting Thomas. If you understand a little bit about nuclear power, about atomic energy and the way that it is produced, you know that it is deadly. The disaster in Ukraine many years ago, Chernobyl, it was one of the biggest disasters in history, followed by Fukushima in Japan. You don't see anything, you don't hear anything, but the radiation is devastating, very destructive. Just as an example to indicate what a doubting Thomas is, we don't believe in such phenomena. Many people don't believe in ghosts, in spirits, in energy, vibrations, what have you. It's all superstition. That's a doubting Thomas. And doubting Thomas is dealing with pranayama. They say, what a nonsense is all this. It's breath control. Now, there are several things wrong with this. First, the book that describes pranayama is called the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Hatha means sun, moon. Now, most people don't know what sun, moon means. You know what sun, moon means. There is a sun gate, there is a moon gate above the body that is responsible for letting energy in, Shiva energy in and Shakti energy out. And there is a sun gate at the bottom that is responsible for Shakti energy coming in and Shiva going out. Hatha Yoga Pradipika is the book that teaches us how to balance the two. The balance between the moon and the sun is sattva. Sadly, there are many people who read this book, maybe even study the book, and they have no idea what it means. Now, in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, pranayama is introduced with an exercise called Nadi Shodhana Pranayama. Nadi is energy channels, and Shodhana means purification. So it is an exercise that cleanses your energy channels to prepare you for the 8 pranayama exercises that follow and are all described in this book. Of those 8, you will learn 4 in this course after Nadi Shodhana. Nadi Shodhana Pranayama means cleansing the energy channels. It doesn't mean cleansing your nostrils or your lungs or your air circulation. It means cleansing the energy channel, purifying the energy channels. So how do you purify? If you're a little bit skeptical, you ask questions and you say, okay, if pranayama is breath control, how does Nadi Shodhana Pranayama, if I do that as a breathing exercise, how does that cleanse my energy channels? The answer is, of course, it doesn't. That doesn't mean that breathing exercises are bad. Breathing exercises are healthy. It increases oxygen in the blood circulation. It makes your lungs stronger. It may clean the throat and the nostrils, the sinuses, a little bit maybe. So, nothing wrong with breathing exercises. But breathing exercises and pranayama, it must be clear, are 2 different things. And it is true, breathing exercises can make you calm. If you're upset, if you're nervous, you take a deep breath, it makes you calm. So breathing exercises work. But they do not lead to the improvements that the Hatha Yoga Pradipika is describing. With each pranayama, it tells us why we use them and what their purpose is. It doesn't lead to any of those improvements. Now also, so in total you have 9 pranayamas described in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. How many do you learn in yoga studios where they teach breathing? Maximum 2 or 3. Nadi Shodhana is done like this. Ujjayi Pranayama is done like this. and maybe Kapalabhati, which is actually a Kriya exercise, you know. Bhastrika, like. But there is something wrong with these exercises. Pranayama is based on the inflow and outflow of energy through the control of the mind, but they have a structure. With Kriya, we have done the inflow and the outflow to become familiar with it, but no structure. Pranayama has a count, and that count is as follows. Inflow, the ratio of the count is this. Inflow 1, retention, four, outflow, 2, retention, 4. Now, this is the basic ratio. We start with a count of 4, 24. No. 4, The basic count for us to start with is 12, 48, 24, 48. This is a basic count. If you do this on a regular basis, after a little time, you increase the count. We will increase every second Saturday, we will increase the count. You end up, the highest count, the maximum count, is 80, 320, 160, 320. You see, it's the same ratio, right? After 2 weeks, we will go to 16, 64, 32, 64. And we will end up in this course with a count of 20, 80, 40, 80. It's always the same ratio, always. Now, assume that we do pranayama as breath control. That means that you inhale counting to 12, which is possible. Then you have to hold your breath counting to 48. For most people, that's possible, if you count fast. Then you have to exhale counting to 24. Here you already start to get in trouble. And after completely exhaling, you then have to hold your breath again, counting to 48. Not possible. And it's only the basic count. Leave alone if you increase the count. Okay? This already should make you think. Most people actually don't even know about this count. This count is only being transferred from teacher to teacher. But it is mentioned in a very mysterious way in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika by saying that the maximum count starts with 80, which is the ultimate count. The highest count is 80, 360, 320, 160, 320. So, all the pranayama exercises, when done as breath control, according to this framework, are completely impossible. So with Nadi Shodhana Pranayama, you don't, maybe you hold your breath, you inhale, then you hold your breath, and then you exhale, and then you hold your breath, but there is no count. And, you know, when I learned yoga from a book. When I was 20 years old, I experienced yoga, and it felt so good that I went to the library and I got a book, Teach Yourself Yoga. I started practicing yoga from that book, and it introduced Nadi Shodhana Pranayama as a breathing exercise and Bhastrika as a breathing exercise. And the instruction with Nadi Shodhana Pranayama was, you have to close one nostril, and then you have to close the other one. Then I thought, that is ridiculous. What is the difference? If I inhale or exhale, it's the same. So I was skeptical, critical, but I did breathing exercise because the book introduced it as such. But I was not going to do this because it just didn't make sense. Later I learned from Ajita, of course, what Nadi Shodhana entails, and that it is not breath control. If you pay attention and you learn breathing exercises and you follow the instructions, there's always something that makes you feel hesitant or doubt. Like, is that right? Is that correct? Somehow you feel something doesn't make sense, but you want to believe it. You don't want to be critical maybe of the teacher, or you're just not going to ask questions. But the reason why you feel some doubt is because something is off, because really there is something that is not correct. So there are so many indications that pranayama is energy and not breath control. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika, sun, moon, and the balance between the two. The sun and the moon are the two entrances and exits of the energy in and out of our body. The fact that prana means vital energy, and the structure of the pranayama exercises all indicate that it is not related to breath. Now, some anecdotes that I can share with you about how pranayama has really helped people heal is there are two very clear examples of how powerful pranayama is if you do it regularly. And when you are healthy, you have a problem because it doesn't really work when you're very healthy. But when you have a chronic disease and you do pranayama and you feel improvement, you're very motivated to do it every day, even twice a day. And that's when it really works. And the first example is a student, a girl. At that time she was in her late 20s. And she came to visit me in my studio in Itaewon. And she introduced herself as a yoga teacher. And she then said that she started practicing yoga because she had a chronic disease, atopy. And it was terrible. She visited me in the summer and she was wearing a turtleneck. And the reason why she was wearing a turtleneck is because she had huge red patches on her skin, on her neck, so hence the turtleneck, but on her legs, on her arms, on her body, neck, everywhere. And she said she was born with that. She was born with a condition where she was lacking one of the vertebrae in her lower back. And the doctors think that that is the cause for the chronic disease. The disease is so terrible that it was very hard to sleep. As a baby, as a child, as a teenager, always waking up crying, scratching until it's bleeding. Terrible. And not only she suffered from this disease, the whole family suffered from it. Because the parents and the siblings were also disturbed during the night because of the sister or the daughter waking up with the terrible pain. So what do you do as a parent? You go to a clinic. And there is no cure for this disease. So they give a cream that maybe reduces the itch. And maybe they give some, I don't know, antibiotics or steroids or something to give more strength. Because the common characteristic I noticed in people with these chronic diseases is that they are very tamas. They're lacking not only Shiva or Shakti, but both. They have an overall lack of energy. And so she said, my mom took me to the hospital, and the creams, they reduced the itch a little bit, but didn't solve any problem. So they tried everything throughout 25, 30 years. They tried different hospitals, small clinics, big hospitals that have a good reputation, and nothing worked, so they tried traditional medicine. They were so desperate they would just try anything. And in the end, she started practicing yoga because people told her that maybe yoga can help. So she started practicing yoga, and because it made her feel good, she became very motivated to practice every day. Because all her life has been about pain and depression. So yoga made her feel good, but it did not reduce the severity of the skin disease. And then she read an article about magic pond yoga, and it was simply the next step. She just tried everything, nothing worked, but you never give up because it's just too terrible to just accept. She became a yoga teacher by default because she practiced yoga every day. So what do? You start teaching yoga. So very flexible, but still with terrible skin disease. So I suggested that she join our course, and I also offered her to start practicing pranayama from the very beginning. So not wait until halfway in the course. I just one-on-one, I taught her how to do pranayama, and it worked. It reduced her the spots, the affected skin reduced, and it continued to reduce. She showed up without turtleneck, and it almost completely disappeared. Almost complete, not completely, but almost completely. One day she came to me and she said, "Ron, my mom wants me to convey her gratitude to you, because for the first time in all my life, we've been able to sleep all night without any disturbance." And the thing is, pranayama, a chronic disease, is chronic for a reason. There is something wrong in your body that causes it. The pranayama didn't completely heal her chronic disease, her skin disease, but it made it very manageable. It also means that when she's lazy and she doesn't practice, it comes back. And throughout the year, she wrote me to let me know that, I got distracted or busy with other things, and it came back, and I start practicing again, and it's under control. Another one is a Vietnamese lady that came to my class in Yoido, and also very dark and depressed. Almost scary to be with that person in one room. Kind of toxic. Because she's so unhappy, so suffering. And she just wants to kind of hurt people, out of frustration, kind of. And she was in her early 30s, so young. And she explained to me that she was suffering from early spinal rheumatism. So that is unusual for a person that age, and also very severe. In the same story as with Juyong, she had tried everything throughout her life. And she, just like Juyong, ended up with yoga, which rheumatism is an affection of the bones. So it gave a little bit relief, but only just a little bit. So she kept practicing, so very flexible, but her condition did not improve much. And the way that doctors dealt with her problem is by giving her very heavy painkillers. And one day she said to me, I hate to go to sleep. And I scratched my head and I said, I don't understand. When you sleep, you don't suffer pain, right? Then she said, yes. But if I go to sleep, I know that I have to wake up again and wake up with all that pain. So she was a mom. She had 3 boys, young, very young at that time. They're now teenagers. And she had a very busy husband, a diplomat. And she was just so busy, while at the same time so suffering from her disease, very desperate to find a solution. And feeling her energy, like with Juyong, I came to the conclusion that she's very, very tamas. So, like with Juyong, I told her to start practicing pranayama from the beginning of the course, starting with Nadi Shodhana pranayama. And it had such amazing impact on her. She could first her appearance. She became totally the opposite of what she was before. She started joking around, giggling, pranking me as a teacher, just trying to make a fool of me in a pleasant way in front of the other students. She became so lively. She stopped taking the medicine, which depresses the pain, oppresses the pain, but has many side effects, terrible side effects. And she became very lively, very enthusiastic, giggling and pranking, joking, just amazing. The transformation from so dark to so bright and light, just amazing. And same story with Juyong. It's a chronic condition. Pranayama doesn't heal it completely, but it makes it controllable. It oppresses the symptom for more than 90%. So she does it every day, if possible twice a day. And the same as with Juyong, she writes me, even recently she writes me an email. And it just happens sometimes, after you move or a big change in your life or you start a new job, you become distracted, you can't practice every day, and the rheumatism becomes unbearable again, forcing her to start practicing again. And it always works. It's just amazing how it works. And now maybe you understand also why I said you are all very healthy. And with pranayama, that is not a good thing. To help you to believe that pranayama really works, you will believe it when you are sick and you actually notice that it makes a difference and that all the medicine that you were given, all the treatments and therapies that doctors have given didn't work, and the pranayama, by changing your energy household, actually works. All right. The rest of what you see in the handout, we will come across that when we read from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. You have to see this as follows. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika exists out of 4 chapters. The first chapter is about the basics. There's a little bit of history. There is yama niyama, there is asana. And there is also instructions on how to create the right circumstances to make your yoga practice successful, beneficial. We have done that up until now without actually reading chapter 1. We will read chapter 1 when we're done with this Nadi Shodhana Pranayama, so very soon. Chapter 2 is about pranayama, which is energy control. Chapter 3 is about mudra, which is energy control, but more powerful, on a higher level compared to pranayama. Then chapter 4 is about samadhi, everything related to meditation. So there is a very logical, systematic build-up. So, assuming that we have gone through chapter 1, which we have without reading it, we now enter chapter 2, and it goes as follows. Sutra 1. The yogin, having perfected themselves in the asanas, should practice pranayama according to the instructions of your guru, with your senses under control, conforming to a beneficial and moderate diet. So having perfected yourself in asanas, asana leads to strength, more energy, which lays the foundation for pranayama. According to the instructions of the guru is also clear. You cannot learn this from a book. You have to learn this from somebody who has been properly initiated into the secrets of yoga, who knows how this works. And more importantly, who knows that this is not breath control. With the senses under control is an indication, indirect, but an indication that this is a mind control exercise. And beneficial and moderate diet, you are what you eat. If you eat healthy food, you will have sufficient amounts of energy to work with. If you eat unhealthy food and large amounts of food, you destroy your levels of energy. It diminishes your levels of energy. So that is what that last sentence means, a beneficial and moderate diet. Sutra 2. When the energy wanders, the mind is unsteady. But when the energy is still, so is the mind still. And the yogin obtains the power of stillness. Therefore, the energy should be restrained. It doesn't say the breath should be restrained. It says energy should be restrained. There's so many indications that this is about energy and not about breath. When the energy wanders, the mind is unsteady. When you're distracted, when you are focused on emotions and desires, the mind becomes very restless. When you practice yoga, in the correct way, leading to sattva, the energy becomes harmonious, so it's not scattered anymore. And as a result of that, the mind becomes calmer. You can see it as follows. People who are relatively unhealthy because of lifestyle choices, no exercises, junk food, etc., not enough sleep, those people are mentally very restless. People who are disciplined, eat healthy food, exercise, sleep enough, rest enough, they're generally mentally also much more focused, calm. So yoga brings that to an even higher level. The suggestion here also is that we need pranayama to enable us to be successful in meditation, which is introduced then in chapter 4. Sutra 3. This is a controversial one. Life is said to exist only so long as there is energy in the body. Its departure is death. So one should restrain the energy. Now, if you read Ajita's explanation, he also doesn't come to the essence of what this means. But the reason why I said that this is controversial sutra is because there are people who say if you practice pranayama, you won't die. Because this sutra says as long as there is energy, there is life. Of course, that is not true. There are no examples of people not dying. We all die sooner or later. But what is true is that if you practice pranayama regularly, yoga in general, or any exercise, of course, is good for health. But pranayama in particular, where you directly deal with energy, you may not live eternally, but at least you will extend your life. And not only that, you will also improve the quality of life. Most people who get older start suffering from all kinds of diseases. That's just part of aging. But there are also people who are still relatively healthy at a high age. And that is the promise that yoga in general and pranayama in particular gives us, that you cannot avoid death, but at least you can still enjoy life by being relatively healthy while you are at a high age. Because believe me, when you're old and you're suffering all kinds of diseases, life is not enjoyable anymore. I already hate just having a cold or a flu. I feel so miserable, I just want to die. It sounds crazy, of course. But it means if already you feel so miserable when you have a flu or a cold, how depressed are you going to be if you start suffering all kinds of other diseases? So at least that is what pranayama promises. It's better health, and better health at a higher age. Then the word death here, that people misinterpret as if you do pranayama then you won't die, because that's what the sutra says. Death here does not mean physical death. Death is tamas. Most people are in a condition that in the yoga scriptures is called the condition death. It's a lack of vital energy. It's the condition in which the higher chakras are not fueled, in which there is no life, there's no sparkle, there's no enthusiasm, there is all the wonderful qualities and characteristics are just absent. That is death. Physically you are alive, but there's just no vitality there. You will see that the word death is used in other sutras also, in this context, where it is not referring to physical death, but the condition of tamas. And many people miss that. Many yoga teachers miss the meaning of that. Sutra 4. When the nadis are full of impurities, the energy does not go into the middle. The middle nadi, Shushumna. How can there be unmani avashta? How can there be the attainment of the goal? So the main goal of yoga is the awakening of the crown chakra. I didn't mention it when we discussed the crown chakra. I should have, but we'll do it now. The 6 chakras below the crown chakra, they all are associated with a mantra that is only one syllable. Lam, Ram, Vam, Bam, etc. We haven't paid much attention to that, but what you see here is the crown chakra has a 3-syllable mantra that is called Unmani. Unmani. Unmani avashta is the condition where the crown chakra is alive. So how can the crown chakra be alive when the nadis are full of impurities? How can the crown chakra be fueled if the middle channel, Sushumna Nadi that is responsible for energy rising up if that energy is not functioning. That channel that cannot function if there is no harmony. Sutra 5. Only when all the nadis, which are full of impurities, become purified, then only does the yogin become expert in the control of energy. Well, I have nothing to add about that. There is nothing symbolical or mysterious about that sutra. That sutra is clear, speaks for itself. Sutra 6. So control of energy, pranayama, should be done daily with the mind in which the sattvika element prevails, till the Sushumna Nadi is free from impurities. Sutra 7. The yogin, assuming the Padmasana, should draw in the energy through the moon, and, having retained it as long as possible, should then release it through the sun. Because you have been properly introduced, you kind of can guess what this means. This is the start of Nadi Shodhana Pranayama. We will read Sutra 8, 9 and 10 in the second session, because there we will complete Nadi Shodhana Pranayama. With this sutra, we introduce pranayama, and then with Sutra 8, 9 and 10, we will have the actual Nadi Shodhana Pranayama. So what did it say? You let in energy through the moon. You let in energy through the moon. Inflow of Shiva. Counting to 12. The counting is not done like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because that is way too fast. To make it really work, you count very slow and gradual. Om 1, Om 2, Om 3. In English people, when they want to count slowly, they say 1001, 1002, 1003. Oh, because we're doing yoga, we count with Om. Retention, 48. I will explain how the retention works. How do you can hold your breath, but how do you retain energy? We will have a look at that. Outflow, what did it say? You let energy in through the moon, and you let energy out through the sun. So, which energy is that? Shiva. Counting to 24, and another retention. The retention. The retention is called kumbhaka. I have used the English words for the stages, but there is rechaka, kumbhaka, puraka, kumbhaka. So inflow, retention, outflow, retention. Every pranayama is according to this in this order. There are some exceptions, but those are very special pranayamas. You do not learn those in this course. In the advanced course, you would learn those pranayamas. Retention. In the kumbhaka stage, you apply a throat lock, Jalandhara Bandha, and a root lock, Mula Bandha. If you have done Ashtanga Yoga, you may have done the root lock. Mula Bandha. But they do it wrong. They tell you to squeeze your pelvic bottom muscles repetitively, which is leading to Rajas in Muladhara chakra. So that is a wrong approach, and it leads to disharmony rather than harmony. The purpose of the root lock and the throat lock is to create a closed circuit in which that energy spreads throughout your whole body. And it sounds much more difficult than it is. First, the throat lock is the easiest. This is actually when you meditate, when you sit on your cushion with a straight back and you're concentrating on nada, you become very straight. Have you noticed that? Yeah. This means that the root lock and the throat lock occur naturally. And you will see later, further down the road when we read another part of chapter 2, that actually the author of the book indicates that it happens spontaneously. That is because you're straight. When you're straight, you sit like this. You tuck in your chin, you stretch up the neck, and that is in fact Jalandhara Bandha. You don't have to very deliberately sit like this, because that is just very physical. It's not physical, it's subtle. So you sit straight. You can, of course, pay some attention to it, tuck in your chin a little bit more than you usually do. And the same with the root lock. When you sit inactively, your muscles are not engaged. But you cannot meditate like this. When you sit straight, when the spine is straight, energy is stimulated. That is why you need to sit straight. But when you sit straight, what do? You tilt the pelvis. And all the muscles in the lower body are gently engaged. That in itself is Mula Bandha. So you don't have to squeeze anything, any muscle. Those muscles are already active. What you can do for Mula Bandha is for a moment to focus on Muladhara chakra. The sun gate is located in the center of Muladhara chakra. So focus on Muladhara chakra, and you can visualize maybe contracting Muladhara chakra. Muladhara chakra, according to the text, is a ball of energy approximately 10 centimeters in diameter, so a little bit bigger than a tennis ball. So you can visualize Muladhara chakra and imagine that you contract that ball. But more importantly, in the beginning you have to experiment a little bit because it's all new. You have to get used to the concept. But in the end, rest assured that both of the locks, the throat lock and the root lock, they're actually already there before you realize it. It was already there before we even talked about it. Every time when you were concentrating on nada, especially when the concentration becomes intense, you become more and more straight, naturally. And that spontaneously activates the throat lock and the root lock. So in the end, you really don't have to pay too much attention to that. Okay, so this is what we do. Nadi Shodhana Pranayama. A count of 12, 48, 24, 48. And the remainder of the time, we concentrate on nada. And because we introduce a new exercise here, the total time of meditation goes up to 25 minutes. You sit on your cushion, you close your eyes, you do not immediately jump into the inflow and the counting because your heart is not in it when you do that. You just settle down for a moment. In the way that we started meditation, you observe, you hear some sounds maybe, you become aware of your breath maybe, your heartbeat, and you slowly start to mentally prepare for the pranayama. You remind yourself how it works, the steps that you take, and then you start with the first step, inflow of Shiva. You imagine taking in Shiva energy. If you find that difficult to imagine, remember the Kriya exercises. Inflow of Shiva we learned through the imagination of swallowing a piece of cloth. And in the last two, Kajakarani and Kapalabhati, we did it without the imagination of swallowing a piece of cloth. But if you find it difficult to just focus on energy flowing in through the moon, you can grab back to what you remember about the Kriya exercises. So you count slowly while imagining Shiva flowing in. Do not be concerned where that energy is going in your body, because that will become a distraction. It's not necessary. All you have to do is focus on the inflow of Shiva. What it does in practice is it increases the amount of Shiva. So it changes your energy balance. Later you will understand that you can use pranayama to change your condition. When you're very tired, you increase Shiva, because Shiva is responsible for rest and recovery. When you're very lazy, like Sunday morning, you take in Shakti energy. You need a kick in the butt. When you're lazy, Shakti energy will activate you, awaken you. So you can change your energy condition by changing the balance of energy, focusing on intake or outflow of a particular kind of energy. In the beginning, you don't know this yet, so you go through the steps. But at some point you become familiar with how it works, how your condition also works, and that the pranayamas can change your condition by choice. So you let Shiva energy in, counting to 12, then the Kumbhaka, counting to 48. What always works best for me is to continue concentrating on nada throughout the process, so that you stay focused. Then you have outflow of Shiva, counting to 24, and then you have the last Kumbhaka. Now the question often is, why do you have this ratio? Why do you let Shiva in, or energy in, only 12 counts, and why energy out 24? And why is the Kumbhaka 48? That is 4 times as long as the inflow. There's a reason for all this. People like to get things. Everybody likes to receive. So inflow is the easiest part. Kumbhaka is the stage in which the energy settles down. So it's the most important stage. That is why it's 4 times as long as outflow. Now, why is the 4 times as long as the retention? Why is the outflow twice as long as inflow? That is because people don't like to give. You like to receive, but you don't like to give. So you have to do a little bit more effort for the outflow. That is the story behind outflow being twice as long as inflow. Because of ego, we don't like to give. I say it with a smile because, we're all adults and we can handle this. But that explains the reason for this ratio of counting. Okay, let's give it a try. That's the best way to go about it.